number one source, Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 361, Sports Card Nation, back again. Have a alumnus guest returning today, but it's been a bit since he's been on, and guy's doing big things for great, deserving people. If you haven't figured out who I might be talking about none other than Tim Virgilio of Signatures for Soldiers. Again, been on multiple times, right? But what he's doing, we can't talk about enough. This is a guy that started this organization double-digit years ago, and with a goal to raise $500, and he's at $500,000 almost, and that's crazy. 100% goes to the charity, which helps injured and disabled vets with things they may need, whether that's paying some bills, keeping them housed, the wheelchair ramp, whatever it may be. And, he's gotten a lot of pro athletes involved now that are willing to help out and donate some memorabilia and signed things. And it's become a year-round thing. It's not his 9-to-5 job, but takes up some of his time after his 9-to-5 job, if you will. And that's dedication, and really appreciate Tim and what he does and how he cares. And I've often told him, like, he has pretty much carte blanche. Anytime you want to come on the show, something going on, you need to talk about an event or whatever the case may be. I reached out to him in this case and thought, man, we haven't had him on in a while. It's time to have him on. He just relocated from Florida to Texas as well. So we'll talk about that to boot. So enough with that. Let's take a quick break and then bring Tim on. Always happy to have this next gentleman on the Sports Card Nation guest line. He is a veteran alumnus of the show, if you will. We've done it in this fashion through video. We've even done in person at the show, specifically the National. And I'm talking none other than Tim Virgilio, Signatures for Soldiers. Welcome back, as always, Tim.
Thanks, John. Great to see you, as always.
Yeah, and listen, I love what you're doing, as do a lot of people, How long's it been now? I'm losing track myself. There'd be a time I could tell you, and now I don't even.
I think I'm losing track as well, my friend. No, it's actually next month, November, will be 11 years.
Wow, God bless you, and all the great work you're doing, which we're obviously going to talk about. Speaking of November, that'll be 7 years of this show, and just crazy. We're both at the T.
Yeah, I was going to say, quite the impressive intro there. I need to talk to your graphics guy.
Yeah, that's not me. That was freelanced out. I'm not going to take any credit. I can't trust it's like your Tim, so I'm sure he's not doing stuff like that. But they got his people who know what they're doing. That can fill in those gaps. And speaking of knowing what you're doing, you've 11 years, and obviously you're further ahead today than when like we've talked before. When you first started the organization, you had a goal raising $500. Obviously, you're well past that now, into the six-figure. Last time I knew, I mean, just obviously when you start with a smaller goal like that, and then where you are now. I mean, just talk about sort of the evolution. Like, did you imagine that you'd be where you are today with Signatures for Soldiers?
No, absolutely not. I mean, this. We've talked about this time and time again. It started November of 2014, and kind of started to take my passion, of collecting autographs and merging it with my passion to help veterans, and reaching out to athletes, asking them if they would sign a couple cards. I'd sell the cards for a couple dollars a piece. And then the money would go to a charity to help homeless and disabled veterans. You know, the goal, like you said, the goal was $500. And, you know, at that time, I mean, I didn't even have a name to it. I didn't have a logo to it. It was just one of these things of, let me just raise the $500, donate it to the charity, and call it a day. And I figured it would take a little while to do, because I was only selling, $2, $3, $4, $5 autographs. I mean, it wasn't huge. And my God, 11 years later, this thing is just taken off. Now I'm kind of all branded up. Got the name, got the logo, got T-shirts, got hats. Get invited to the nationals and every year since 2018. So this year was year 5, because COVID year was canceled. So it's been the evolution is just it's been more than I can ever have imagined. It's has been very grassroots effort. A lot of people in the hobby have gotten behind it. Collectors, dealers, companies. It's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And I think the thing that really I'm most proud of, and my wife and I talk about this, is Signatures for Soldiers has become more than just a vehicle to generate money to help homeless and disabled veterans. It's become a community. And there's people I've become like yourself, that I've become extremely good friends with, that I probably would have never have crossed paths with if I wasn't doing this. And my wife and I genuinely, that people want to help. They just sometimes, well, I think there's 2 things that stop them from helping. One is they don't think that what they can give will really make a difference, so they don't give. And then the other is they just don't know how to help. And I think Signatures for Soldiers has become a vehicle for both. Right now we're sitting at, since I started this, we're sitting at over $450,000 raised. And that's literally been, I mean, you've seen it firsthand. It's literally been, $2, $4, $5 at a time, and it adds up really quickly. It's amazing. Yeah, I'm just speechless. I mean, the evolution has just been, it's been very organic, very grassroots. It's been amazing. I'm blessed. I'm blessed. I'm overwhelmed. I'm amazed.
Well, listen, the hobby's blessed to have you, the organization, and the veterans that get helped by the money raised, right? Are blessed as well. And like you said, it is a community, right? And we hear all the bad stories in the hobby, right, guys? Where people, whether it's robbing or scamming or trimming or altering, the list goes on, right? And those are real stories, unfortunately, and they need to be talked about, right? But for every one of those bad stories, right, there's 10 good ones. And sometimes I don't think, and I try not to be guilty of this, but sometimes I don't think we highlight those good stories enough, especially when they do outnumber the bad. It's like when you turn on the news, right? They always lead with all the negative
I,
stuff
I,
first, because
I'm
it's train wreck mentality. People, for whatever reason, that's just human nature, good or bad. We slow down at a wreck and try to see. But there's so many good. I don't think across. It's not even just a hobby thing. I just across society. I don't think we cover all the positive stories enough. But you were going to say
yeah.
something.
No, yeah, I was going to say exactly the same thing. I mean, you watch half an hour of the news, and 25 minutes of it is what's wrong, what's been bad going on, and then there's a 2-3 minute segment of, oh, hey, here's a little feel good story.
Yeah.
Okay, on to the next thing. But yeah, no, I think for me, doing this has really renewed my faith in humanity, in terms of just all the great people that I've met, who just give very selflessly, and basically they want no recognition in return. They're just like, hey, I just want to be a part of something that's truly making a difference in somebody's life. I mean, I've had I think one of my favorite memories from the national. It was the first national that we did in 2018 in Cleveland. We were kind of tucked back in the corner. Nobody really knew us, that type of thing. And, going into it, I think I'd raised at that point like $3,200, and we did almost 4,000 that weekend, which I was thrilled with. And, I remember this young boy comes up to me with his grandmother, and, the kid was probably 7, 8 years old, and he reaches in his pocket and he says, "Here, this is for the soldiers. I hope this helps." And he hands me $1, and it just blew me. It literally brought tears to my eyes. I'm kind of getting emotional now talking about it, but it's just such a cool experience. Here's this, 8, 10-year-old kid just going, you know what, this is what I can give, and I just want to do something. And it was really amazingly touching.
Yeah, very cool. And again, with that, and deservedly so. That's just, no matter how old you are, right? Or whether, and then everyone has or has had at least one family member, if not more, right, serve in the military, or maybe unfortunately, make the ultimate sacrifice as well with some of the early wars. And I come from a military family, so it hits close to home for me. And we forget, we think, I think sometimes we're guilty, not so much me, but I think some people are guilty of, like, they think, well, if you don't get killed in action, which obviously we hope never happens, then you just come home and you're okay, right? We don't realize that there's injuries besides casual, where people will lose, unfortunately, limbs and things like that, where mobility becomes an issue. And obviously, what you do can maybe build a ramp or make someone's house accessible to their disability. So the ultimate sacrifice isn't always life, but you lose, some of your abilities to maybe walk and do certain other things.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we forget about that, aspect of military service.
Yeah.
And so
But
besides the monetary and helping to get some of these things that these folks need, I think it also sheds light on, like, a sacrifice is not just losing your life, but in other forms as well. And I think that's important to know, right? I think sometimes we lose the in between, right? Everyone thinks it's just you either get killed serving your country or you don't, and it's not as black and white as there's other things that happen in between. That money raised goes to do some of that stuff, whether it be a wheelchair ramp. Kind of talk about where some of these monies go, and think about this, Tim. And I know I'm rambling on here, but it's important, right? From that $500 to you're almost up to $500,000.
I was thinking about that today, and I just to even say that out loud is ridiculous. Yeah, you're talking about we were talking earlier about kind of the news cycle, and
Yeah.
you know, military veterans, it's not really in the news cycle right now, so it's kind of out of sight, out of mind type thing. And it's I think people think, oh well, they serve in the military, they come out, have a pension, or the federal government take care of them or something like that, and that's not always the case. And I think what the other thing that's been really cool for me, and even my wife has talked about this, is how many veterans are in the hobby collecting. And you touched on it, that Signatures for Soldiers has kind of become this platform that allows us, and I use that term very broadly, because anybody that's involved, it allows us to really talk about what the veteran issues are, and keep them at the forefront. And It's amazing. We'll be at a show and, a veteran will come up and, oh, I served in the Army, the Marines, whatever. And then they'll just start to openly kind of talk about either their military experience or maybe some of the struggles that they've had coming back and just generally adjusting to non-military life, which, which can be very difficult. But yeah, as far as the money we've raised, my God, do we have enough time to even talk about how we've used the money? Just this week. Let's start with just this week. It's fresh in my head. We have paid, let's see, we've paid a security deposit for housing and electric for a veteran who has been homeless and is now getting into affordable housing. So obviously he didn't have the money for the security deposit for the electric or the apartment. So we paid that literally just the other day. So now literally this weekend he's going to be housed for the first time over a year. Let's see, what else? Oh, we've had two female veterans who fell behind on their rent. So we've brought that current. So we've kept those two ladies from being evicted. Let's see, a veteran needed some help with paying for car repairs. That's just this week. That's just this week. My God, we've done so many other things. We've written out checks to other small nonprofits that help homeless and disabled veterans that align with us so they can do their great work. Again, we're getting a lot of requests for paying overdue rent or security deposits. Just the 3 weeks ago, we paid the security deposit veteran who was homeless and getting in safe, affordable housing. So literally as of 2 weeks ago, he's safely housed for the first time in 20 years. So this guy's been homeless. I mean, I know for me, and I take this for granted, I've never had to worry about where I'm laying my head or going to have, I've been extremely blessed. So just to think about something like that, it's like, oh my God, I can't even fathom. We've had a veteran who was paralyzed, basically on tree trimming business, fell out of a tree, and basically is paralyzed from chest down. And in order to keep the business, he has to have a specialized off-road wheelchair so he can continue to supervise his crews. So we paid, this was a couple of years ago, we paid the brand new specialized wheelchair for him so he could keep his business and continue to provide for his family. We purchased furniture for formerly homeless veterans who've gotten into safe and affordable housing because you take somebody who's homeless, put them into a one-bedroom apartment, and all they've really got is clothes on their back and carry. So we've purchased bed, purchased couches, pots and pans, gift cards to go food shopping. It's just what we're trying to do is, where one nonprofit ends as far as their services and where another one begins, there's typically a gap in there, and we're trying to fill those gaps. I'm not looking to reinvent the wheel of what's already being, just to fill the gaps, to bridge them from one to the next. And like I said, everybody wants to thank me for the work that I'm doing. I just keep saying it's not me, it's all of you. You having me on this show to talk about this and reach one more person who doesn't know about us is huge. This is,
I appreciate that about you, Tim. You're very you like to spread that credit around. I think that's a testament to the person you are.
Time to hear from one of our great sponsors, but Sports Card Nation will be right back after that.
For nearly 50 years, Sports Collectors Digest has been the voice of the hobby, bringing you comprehensive coverage of the sports collectible industry. From industry news, auction results, market analysis, and in-depth stories about collectors and their collections, Sports Collectors Digest has everything you need to know about the hobby. SCD is also your leading source for listings of sports collectible dealers, card shops, card shows, and the latest from the industry's top companies. To check out all the latest news or to subscribe to the hobby's oldest magazine, visit sportscollectorsdigest.com or call 1-800-829-5561.
Let's go! You are listening to the Sports Card Nation podcast.
You're doing a lot, a majority, if not all, like the logistics and the heavy lifting, right? And I know you don't like to pat yourself on your back, so that's where I'll come in and do it for you. And,
this is where you're going to interrupt me, huh?
Yeah. This is I've gotten better at this, but I'm going to make an exception here because I know you're sort of being the John Stockton dishing out some credit here, but. Again, this was your launching, right? And I know you mentioned some other organizations, right? But we're at this point we're talking about Signature Soldiers. This is what you've built over the past 11 years, right? Again, we've talked about this, right? All charity is good, right? But some of the times, not all the funds go where you think it's going. That's not the case here. As you stated on this show before, right? You're not taking a paycheck. You have a job. So 100% of what people do give and donate goes to the effort and the cause. And that's not common in most charities, to be blunt honest. And yet it is with Signatures. And again, that's hats off to you. For doing that, and it's also you're giving of your time, right? It is a lot of work. You may not always say it or advertise that. I know, just from knowing you, you don't do it half-assed. Pardon my language. That's a grind, right? I just do shows as a dealer, and it's a grind. So you're doing that when you set up at these shows. With the Signatures for Soldiers inventory, the travel, just getting organized. When you get stuff sent to you, just to kind of put it where it needs to be going, to ship out in those cases, right? So there's just so many different things you have to do. It's not like someone just donates $50 and it just goes in the bank account, that's great too, but it's not. It's way more than that. As you well know, and certain other people probably do as well. You do that because you want to, because you care, and I think that needs to be, mentioned. And I know, again, you don't always give yourself a lot of credit, and you're very generous in giving others kudos. But there is no signature. Let's put it this way: Signatures for Soldiers wouldn't exist without Tim Virgilio. And I know that probably makes you squirt because you don't like to take it, but it is a fact, like it or not, it is a fact. But
it's also the
where
amazing
you
support
are
too.
11, yes, I agree with you, but 11 years in, things don't even a lot of things don't even last 11, good and bad. And so that, again, that's a testament to perseverance and fortitude and dedication and all those great words that probably don't even just, maybe not even strong enough for what you're doing. And, it's again, whether whatever political affiliate, this isn't a political thing, right? Very few families don't have someone that served in the military to defend our country and our freedoms. And so there's no reason, I think one of the reasons people get behind it is because we can all relate to it, whether it's someone served themselves or a family member, and just the importance of our military to our nation's history, if you will.
If you're in the hobby, I was going to say, and if you're into the hobby, you get some really cool items from us too. So
yeah, well, that's that's a good segue. Let's Let me ask you this before we get into some of the athletes that have sort of jumped on board, more now than before. 11 years in, has it got easier, harder? Like, where would,
You know,
how would you answer that?
Uh, my answer would be yes. It's gotten easier and it's gotten harder.
Yeah.
Um, obviously there's certain day-to-day things, how it is. You get into a rhythm of doing it and that part's easy. I think the challenge that I've had is being able to offer new stuff and not just the same kind of recycled stuff, that like, if I've had a player who's been signing stuff for me for 10 years that, I don't just have that athlete stuff, but I have other stuff as well, so that's been some of the challenge. Honestly, probably the hardest part for me is the number of requests for assistance that we get and trying to meet all of those needs with the limited funds that we have. Um, I mean, there's been times where I've had to say no, I can't help, and that's been hard. So so has it gotten easier? Yes. Has it gotten harder? Yes. A little bit of both. The more that people find out about what Signatures for Soldiers is about, they want us to, come to this show or to come to that show. And I would love to travel the country and do that. But, like you said, I've got a full-time job that, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, I'm working, and I can only take off so much from work. So, I've got to be thoughtful about what shows I can go to and don't go to, because again, there's the expenses, all of it. But as far as kind of reaching more and more athletes, that's become a little because now, it's like anything else. If you came to me and you're like, hey, Tim, I vouch for this guy because of my relationship with you, I'd go, oh, okay, John, Billy's a good guy because John says he is, that type. And it's kind of the same thing with the athlete. I've had athletes who have vouched for us, and, yeah, Signatures for Soldiers, legitimate thing. We've had people that have jumped on board just simply because of that.
Yeah, and you've had, I mean, I don't, probably too many even to name them all, but as you've built momentum, as this train's gotten rolling, to an analogy, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think you're getting more athletes involved, and I think some of that probably comes from the athletes seeing some of their athletes that they know kind of get involved, like, hey, what can
Yep.
I do, or how do I get involved? So you get some of that momentum. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Now more than ever, we have more active current athletes in the professional ranks who are on board than we've ever had. And a lot of that has been because, they'll see the athlete doing something or maybe wearing one of our hats or one of our shirts and hey, what's that about? And I think the one example that really just comes to mind, we've talked about this guy before, Mitch Haninger, who played for the Mariners, not this past season but the season before. He had said to me, he's like, oh, hey, I have a box. It was like every at the end of every off season or end of every season, he would send us a box of his game used cleats that we sell and go to help homeless and disabled veterans. He told me, he's like, yeah, he's like, I've got a box in my locker that I'm putting some cleats in. He's like, I'll get it out to you. And so he sends it to me and I open it up. And not only are there cleats from him, but there's cleats from several of his teammates at the time. And I asked him about it, and he said, yeah, he said, guys saw the box in my locker walking by, asked me what that was about, told them what I was doing, and next day they were coming by and dropping their own cleats in there. So, so you definitely, so again, I think that's a great example of, somebody vouching for Signatures for Souls and just seeing that snowball. So it's been really amazing. I use the word humbling a lot because it is. It's humbling. I'm just a guy. I'm not really that special. But here are people that are just getting behind this. It's awesome. I become speechless when
Yeah, and we all, we all just people, right? But you chose to take this on, and not only to do it right, but to do it in the fashion you're doing it. And we've seen some hobby entities get behind it, whether it's a podcast, the national, like you said, allowing you set up. I know you were the official charity of the national more than once. I think 2 or 3 times, and I'd like to see. It's easy for me to say, Tim, but I'll say it right. I'd like to see. I think there's more. Like there's more meat on that bone, hobby wise, right? Just like a lot of athletes are getting involved, and like you in Mitch Haneker's case, you like even his teammates say, "Hey, let me add to your box that you're going to send." Right? We'll do it for part 1 of our conversation with Tim Virgilio, Signatures for Soldiers. We'll obviously be back next Friday with part 2, but check Signatures if you don't know about them or you don't know a lot about them. Check Signatures for Soldiers out. I'll have that stuff in the show notes, the links, and doing great things for people who did a lot for this country and need our help now. And I think it's very important. It's something I feel very strongly about. And Tim is, again, 100% of all proceeds go to the charity. Tim does not take any pay or salary. He does it out of the kindness of his heart. And we'll talk more about that too on part 2 next Friday. So we're going to hear from our Hobby is the People announcer and then wrap up this week's episode.
Time for our Hobby is the People announcer of the week.
This is Mike, this Baseball Card Life, and remember, the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.